Tiffany West is joining me today from Colorado on Awaken and Ascend as part of her mission to teach others about the importance of emotional wellness so that we can end the cycle of generational trauma and really start passing down healing. Welcome. I am Jennifer Regular, your host, and in today's episode, Tiffany is going to share how to manifest magic in your life. So let me introduce her before we really get into it. Tiffany West is the proud owner of Interior Health Design, an inner wellness life coaching company. She is an emotional care coach, helping women overcome anxiety and depression so they can live with inner peace and lifelong joy. Overcoming anxiety and more than 10 years of debilitating chronic pain and illness herself, Tiffany has found emotional peace and freedom and is now transforming the lives of others by teaching and guiding them through the same process that she used to heal herself. Tiffany, I am so happy that you are here and sharing this with us today because, the world is turned upside down. It's so tumultuous now on the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, community, and world level that I'm so glad you have a process to help us get it through it. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Jennifer. So happy to see you. And I'm so happy to be here. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. And I need this today. So I'm excited.
We are here today. And as an emotional care coach, there's a lot that you're witnessing in your clients every day as well. And I'm sure also in your own life, because we're all mirrors for each other, right? We're always seeing the same things that are going on in us, and we can't identify or witness what's going on in another unless we felt it and experienced it ourselves. When I know in the healing work, we can only take people as far as we've come. And you've come a really long way. You've been on a journey through chronic pain, through emotional turmoil. And I'm curious what it was that got you through it. So please, as much as you're willing to share, what was that whole experience like for you, and how did it become transformed into emotional care?
Yeah, thank you. That's a really good question. So I, like most of us, was born into this culture of, hustling and working hard and achieving and, focusing more on the importance of what I do versus how I feel and who I am. And growing up as a very sensitive, like highly sensitive soul, I had parents that had no clue. That terminology wasn't even in our vocabulary back then, and I didn't know about it. I just knew I felt it. So from a very early age, I always felt very, very disconnected from my truth, but always yearning to connect with that version of me, like almost have permission to explore who I was, but it was always reflected back as too much, or I was too emotional or not emotional enough, or there was always something that gave me the message to stuff it down. Just push it away, put it down there, and then show up how everybody wants you to show up. That's how I could stay safe. That's how I felt like I could belong and get the love that I needed. And I'm sure many people can relate to that. So growing up and going into my early 20s, I really started experiencing my chronic health issues that, became chronic, but I started seeing little drops of those symptoms. And it started with like chest pain and chronic headaches and migraines. After I had my oldest son when I was about 27, I developed asthma, eczema. Couple years later, I started getting into like the gut issues and having really bad heartburn and stomach problems. And then my hair started falling out. Like it was a firework of symptoms going on in my health. And I was so confused because I was so young and it felt like I was pushing 80 years old. It just was like something's off, something's not right. So I journeyed to doctors, as we all do, and looking for answers, looking for help. And I just was unable to get the support that I needed. Everything, testing, all of that was like, nothing's wrong. You're okay, or let's put you on this medicine that gives you this side effect. We all know that journey. And not to diminish Western medicine, it's beautiful what they have created. It helps save lives. I was just looking for a long-term solution and looking to get to the root of why I felt the way that I did. And that really led me on a path to start my journey as a health coach. And I started that back in 2017. And I really started working on my diet and my nutrition and how I, the things that I put on my skin and what I use to clean my home. I just started really cleaning up and getting more holistic with my lifestyle. And that was amazing. And it worked for a while, but I continued to hit plateaus. So did my clients. And I was just wondering why I couldn't stick to the habits. And I wanted to do it. I knew it worked. I knew it was healthy, but something would just continuously pull me away from that night, always resort back to those old ways and feel really emotionally beat myself up for it. So I then continued on to be a life coach. I started working on mental health and, thinking positive and getting our mindset right, which is a huge essential tool as well. And that worked for a little bit. I was working on manifesting and, mind over matter and all those types of things. And that was helpful. And it was like a band-aid. However, because I had not really looked at what was going on with me emotionally and really honoring my sensitivity, and healing that part of me that felt very stuffed and dismissed as a child, literally my truth. That is why these other modalities weren't quite hitting the mark. And I didn't realize that at the time, but that's what brought me into this emotional work. And I have to give credit to spirit and my soul for that, because I was not getting the answers that I needed. And through frustration and through years, over a decade of just going through the medical system, trying everything, I was just really angry that nobody could help me. And it forced me to continue to move inward and look deep, deep down into what could actually be causing all of this and what I needed to nurture. And that's what landed me in the emotional care. I started doing tons of research on how unresolved emotional pain can impact our physical and mental health, how it shows up in our life, in our relationships, in our health, in our finances. And that is where I feel like I landed in my sweet spot. That's where it's like I struck gold, and I just knew I could feel I was completely aligned with the work that I needed for myself and with the work I was going to be offering to the world. So that is what really helped start getting me out of that dark night of the soul and start understanding what was at the root of why I was feeling so terrible. And the thing that did it for me was all of my symptoms, I was looking at them as a problem, like there was something wrong with me. I needed to be fixed. And what my body taught me and my emotions taught me is that all of that was part of the solution. It was my body's way of trying to get my attention and let me know, hey, something's off. I need you to pay attention. And that's when I started really learning how to take care of myself, like what real self-care looked like on an emotional, mental, and deep physical level. And so that's what I do in the work now. I'm an emotional care coach, and I help women overcome depression and anxiety and really get to the root of what their inner needs are and what their bodies are calling for and why it's showing them and are calling them in through those symptoms. And I help them really navigate that process so that they can heal. And once we heal, then we are in touch with our true selves. Then we do tap into our magic. And then that's when things really start to open up and the world becomes our oyster and we get to have fun with manifesting and creating what it is we want to create in our lives.
Thank you so much for taking us through that journey. And yeah, like you say, going through all of those different layers, those different aspects of life and areas in life that support us and that can get out of balance when we're focusing on one area more than the other. In today's society, we all want health and wellness. Of course we do, and we work towards it, and yet we still prioritize productivity and performance, and that health and wellness falls on the back burner and it goes slower down because we have
Yes.
so much attention to the productivity and performance. And it's kind of backwards, isn't it? Like we kind of want to be in a healthy state and experience wellness so that we're producing and performing at optimal level. And
Yeah.
yet the two tend to fight each other. And I loved how you started treating like food as medicine initially, to get your physical health in order and kind of, clear house, so to speak, internally. And then you were decluttering as well. And then moved up into the emotional and mental and spiritual freedom. Like there's the motto I use about freeing your spirit to direct the life that you're meant to live. And to me, it all comes down to keeping our spirit intact to move us through life and to recognize the fullness of it. And the fullness of it isn't all great and happy and joyful, it's all of the things that you just talked about and mentioned, and that is the fullness of life. And sometimes we avoid that and suppress it and push it away or deny it. And then we're not living our lives fully, and then we're not open up so much to the magic of life. And I love how you talked about how you help people really get to the root of the problem as well, because, that made me think of weeds. There's some that, you just want to pull out or cut off or prune and just get out of the way. But if you don't go down deep enough, it just keeps growing back, doesn't it? And then
Yeah.
if you neglect
Yes.
it completely, I mean, it just overtakes the whole field of possibilities of what else could be created there and blooming there and blossoming and growing, and that's the same thing in us. Mimicking nature on the outside is our own natural rhythm, and being able to uproot any of those weeds that are growing and that don't belong there, that are inhibiting our growth, inhibiting our
Mhm.
blossoming. And so I love that you kind of this place, and that you take your clients to this place of rediscovering that magic. And so how
Yeah.
do you
Yeah.
define magic? What does that mean for you and for your clients?
What magic is for me is when I started to truly nurture myself and start to create enough internal safety to be myself. I mean, we hear that all over the place. Love yourself, be who you are, and it sounds great. But if we haven't ever been given the message that it's safe to be seen as who we are, or safe to show up in the world as who we are, that message can actually be very damaging, because then we try to force ourselves into this state of self-acceptance and self-love when we haven't really healed the trauma internally around why that feels so scary to do that and why we disconnected from that in the first place. So when I started to come into knowing that safety was the key for me to start letting my nervous system know, hey, it's okay to speak up and speak your voice. It's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to start being who you truly are, because I was healing those inner versions of my inner child that would either get in trouble or get scolded, or it just was not it was disproved of to be my full self and to explore that. When I started to give myself permission to let that be okay, and I started to create this inner world of safety, it was like I started, like you said, to clear out those weeds and really start working on the soil that I had been growing from. And when I started nurturing that soil, literally I got more access to my intuition and my gifts, and I learned that my sensitivity is like such a superpower, and I need that to be so available and to be able to hold space for the people that I'm here to serve and for my clients. And I really started to create things in my life with so much less effort than what I had been taught it took to be successful. You have to work hard, you have to push yourself, you have to stay in your head and think your way through everything. And although that does work and I created success that way, it burned me out and it created a ton of discord in my health, and I was just not fulfilled, like you said, and happy and whole. However, when I started to take better care of myself and fall back and do less, I noticed that the universe did all the heavy lifting. And I was just manifesting things from this vibration of self acceptance and feeling safe to be who I was. And that's when I started to catch on to like, wow, this is like having a magic wand. And now I can create in my life and co create with my inner wisdom and with spirit. And so much more can happen that I don't have access to just in my human limitation or in my mental limitations. And when I was able to clear the clutter internally, I wasn't relying on my brain and putting so much of a heavy load on my brain to figure it all out and scan for threats and try to keep me safe. Like that's a heavy load for our brain. When I was able to start delegating and resourcing the wisdom of my body and feeling my emotions and getting the intuitive hits from that and the wisdom that comes from that, that's when my brain was freed up to start actually functioning in its most optimal way. And so it was like this mind body connection, instead of those two working apart and against each other, competing for who got to be in the driver's seat. They started working together and flowing together, and my body stopped sending signals that I was unsafe. My brain didn't have to spend so much energy trying to create ways to protect me, and it could actually just focus on creating and manifesting. And that's where I find the magic came, was when I just had to, when I stepped back and I let my inner wisdom start guiding and showing me and working through inspiration versus self pressure and criticism.
Yeah, you created space at that point for all of that to emerge. and for the inspiration and creativity to also come in. I think it's so important
Hmm.
to create space around things. You talk too about, conflicting messages and energies that go on as well that are creating a friction, right? And can also create. And it took me back to someone saying once, you spend the first 2 years of your life learning to walk and talk, and the next 18 years, you're told to sit down and shut up. And I mean, that's really confusing. Like, what is it we're supposed to do? We don't know when it's appropriate to talk and to walk our talk, and to express ourselves in the ways that we're meant to and want to and do so naturally, because now we're trying to fit things in or meet expectations or fulfill obligations that we might feel or experience guilt. I call that the fog, that dense fog that feels heavy and obscure. Fear, obligation, and guilt is what that would stand for. And then lose what it is that we stand for, and
Hmm.
be able to speak that out. And it's very confusing, and we
Extremely.
want it to be seen and heard, and yet we emotionally fear it at the same time. And I wonder if it goes back to that, like we're taught one thing and then we're told that's wrong, and it's the
Yeah,
opposite way.
totally. Yeah, it's that programming and that conditioning on what's right, what's wrong, what are the rules, and those are usually passed down by our caretakers and our family dynamic initially, and then it gets spread out into the world, into our systems, our school systems, our job systems, our worldly systems, and all of that just gets downloaded into our brain as this is what's right, this is what's wrong, and our brain is never nobody's ever modeled to us to check in if it feels good for us. It's like this one size fits all blanket system that everybody's supposed to go through, and just flourish through that when we're all individual human beings with individual blueprints and souls and different things that make us tick and make us who we are. And more importantly, we all have different nervous systems. And our nervous system is at the base of everything that we're operating from. And so one person might experience something that's not rattling to the nervous system at all, whereas somebody else does, and it completely, puts them into a freeze mode or a shutdown mode. And so without being taught how to honor that and understand ourselves in such that deep way to know what works for us and what doesn't, what helps us flourish and what doesn't, of course it's confusing because we're trying to follow a model that might not be aligned with our truth. And that is really, to me, the way I see it now, that is the journey of life, is to remember who we are and to create a healing space internally so we can feel safe to come back home to that.
Yeah, it really does come back to safety, doesn't it? And so, how do we learn to upgrade our operating system? I mean, we have that for computers and other devices and so on, but we have our own operating system, our nervous system, as you just said. So how do we upgrade that? How do we up level it, regulate it, so that it's supporting us in the best possible way? What can we do?
Yeah, definitely. So I created a method through my experience of coming out of my dark night, and it's called the Calm Remedy. And it's a four-step process to really start to, first step is learn how to connect back in to who you are, because we are taught at a very early age to disconnect and disassociate from the body and from our emotions so that we can be smart enough and achieve enough and do what other people say and become who we need to be to get that emotional love and bonding and support that is required for us to be emotionally healthy. And so in order to do that, I think a lot of times we are taught to try to figure it out up here in our heads. And so the method, it really gives us a break from the head space. And I really start helping my clients connect with their bodies and the sensations that they feel as a result of everything going on in their heads. And
Mhm.
so instead of trying to interpret that and analyze that, I really take them through an initial process of just learning how to re-inhabit their bodies and do that in a very slow, methodical, gentle way to where it feels safe. And then as we continue to do that, we come against the emotional wounding that is invisible and they didn't know were there. And feelings come up and emotions come up when we start to bring awareness to our internal world. And that is where my role as an emotional care coach comes in, to help recognize when there's discomfort, when there's trauma being triggered, and then I create a method for them to work through that trauma, and that's where we start creating the safety. So the simplest thing is to really start learning how to come in contact and start connecting with your body and with the sensations that are happening in your body, and just start learning how to just observe without having to do anything there. That's really where I start with where I started, to just really, like, I was in a lot of pain and I always tried to resist the pain. I'd always try to figure out why it was happening, what I could do to make it better, how do I get it to go away. All of that resistance to what my body was using as a way to communicate to me was actually making me suffer even more. And so by bringing awareness to the pain, but not judging it and not trying to resist and disconnect and figure it out, just literally like connecting. I had pain in my chest, I would just notice, wow, my chest hurts. It hurts really bad. And I would get really clear about just observing that with compassion and just kind of overviewing what it felt like, kind of describing it in my mind and just getting to know it and shifting my relationship from I need to get rid of this. This is a problem to, oh, wow, I'm curious that what my body needs, what my body is trying to tell me through this sensation. And that's where I started really open up the lines of communication with my body to start getting those messages over time. And of course, going through the rest of the steps of my process.
Amazing. Thank you. That conscious connection, the contact, and noticing with compassion, with
Mhm.
compassion. Yeah.
There's
And so,
something really healing about awareness, right? Just
mm,
to, when we're not aware, when we're kind of on the fast track and we're ignoring symptoms of our body, or they seem like a nuisance, or we're literally in survival mode and we don't have time. Literally, our brain's telling us, you don't have time to focus on that. You need to go to work, you need to pay your bills, you've got to put out these fires in your life. That it makes perfect sense. So this isn't anybody's fault that this isn't something that they would naturally go to. And even when they are taught, it's very uncomfortable at first because it goes against all the programming that they've been in. So just the simple act of just becoming aware, just bringing your conscious awareness to what at one time you were very unconscious about, that can activate a lot of healing just on its own without you having to do much more.
that's really training our mind in a positive way to be useful, right?
Mhm.
Is to allow for that mindfulness, bringing the mind and the attention to that. And then our mind can be really useful,
Absolutely, and it can still chew away at something, and but we're actually directing its focus, and we're becoming the supervisor over our minds versus our minds just running the show. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. It reminds me of something I heard recently too, where someone quoted about, follow your heart and take your brain with you. Let your
Yep.
brain kind of follow. I thought that was
Yeah.
cute. So you mentioned a few times that you are an emotional care coach, and it's a wonderful process that you're taking people through. And I'd love to give people an opportunity to connect with you, Tiffany. So how would they be able to do that? What do you offer? How would they connect? Is there a website, social media? What's the first step people can take with you?
Yeah, the very first step is I offer a free 45-minute wake-up call. That is where we get on the call. I take you through those 4 steps and kind of give you more insight as to what that looks like and how that applies to you and what you're struggling with. And then you can get a feel if my support is something that feels aligned with you and your body. You'll know on the call if it feels good or if something's kind of off. And really, I just do it as a way to help you wake up, to bring that awareness into shining a light on things that are ailing you or things that you feel like are keeping you stuck or blocked or you can't quite overcome. I really help you wake up to a new way of looking at that and giving you options on some ways that you may not have tried yet to help move forward in that. So whether I'm the person that's a good fit for you or not, my intention with this call is to help you get more clear on what it is that you need so that you can move forward in a direction that's going to support you and your nervous system, versus what some of the elements may have been in the past where you would try that and it wouldn't quite work, or you would go at it in a way that was really self-pressure filled, or I don't know, just that weird energy of like should do it, or that toxic masculine energy. I really help you get very clear on your system and a way to approach it that's going to be a lot more serving and beneficial for you as a whole. So my wake up call would be step 1, and I have a link that I can share with you for that.
Oh, beautiful. Perfect. Yeah, we'll make sure that link goes in the video description. So anyone watching, listening, make sure you check that out. I also have a soul care guide that you can download. It's Finding Solace in Everyday Life. And I'll put that in a link for you too, just down below. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us, Tiffany, or a website, even if people just want to explore before booking that call with you?
Absolutely, yeah, it's www.tiffanycoachme.com, and that'll give you more insight. My stories in there. I've got some love notes from clients and their journeys, and you'll get it. I've got a whole bio in there where you could understand where I've come from, and just get to know me a little bit more. And I just want you to know that if you've got a diagnosis or if you've been experiencing any kind of physical, mental, emotional pain, that's not your destiny, right? There is help out there and there is a way to change it. And this doesn't have to be what you settle for. I once thought it was like, oh, well, I guess this is just going to be my life. And there's so much more out there once you get that support that aligns with you and you really heal those emotional wounds so you can start creating magic in your life.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Tiffany. And this is what part of the joy is of, interviewing and bringing these innovative light leaders and, healers and wellness advocates to the show, because there's always a story and it's a similar story. There's a common thread, something that we all go through when you find our own paths of healing and transformation through that. So I always encourage people to keep coming back every week to explore new topics and people and choices that are being made that may inspire and empower you too. So I want to thank each and every one of you that have been watching that do come back every week. And if you are new, then please subscribe and tell us what really appealed to you, what spoke to you, what you might be going through right now in the comments. Tiffany and I would love to hear from you, and we will respond to you. We're here, we see you, we're listening to you, we're holding space for you. So, Tiffany, thank you so much for sharing your time, your energy, and your expertise with us, and all of this insight and inspiration. And of course, your truth and your authenticity is just shining so brightly. And I appreciate you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Such a pleasure to be here, shouting out to everyone, to sending you love and light. And I am really honored to share this space with you. I am so, so grateful you're holding this space to be able to provide this for people out there that are needing it. I love what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we'll see you all again next time on Awaken and
Bye.
Ascend.